So I think Graffiti's journey started, I would say, way back in 1995. And at that point in time, it was fundamentally a boutique studio, and predominantly doing TV commercials. And once in a while, if we got lucky, we would get a 1 minute film. That was one of the best phases of the studio, and also sort of my career started around the same time. And I was very fortunate that my career started under Ram Mohan sir, who was also the co-founder at Graffiti. Both Tilak and me, my partner Tilak and me had the good fortune of starting under him, and when he took us under his wings. And we were very lucky because at that point of time, people came to us with possibly some of the most toughest jobs, and we never got any easy work, right? Graffiti's name became synonymous with anything new, path-breaking, different. We got paid to experiment, we got paid to have fun, and I think that sort of defined the studio's journey, I would say, till at least about 2001. That's where Ramon sir, always believed that we should produce our own content at some point. It's very important for Indian kids to grow up with Indian characters, Indian stories. India has such a rich mythology. It has so much of visual art. I think India has possibly one of the best visual heritage, across the world. We realized that we need to sort of make a shift from being a boutique advertising production house to sort of moving to a studio model, right? Which would mean having a pipeline, and which would mean having people heading departments and stuff. So we realized that we needed to make that transition. So reorienting ourselves as a studio, people, processes, all of that. And I think we were very lucky that at that point of time, one of our friends, Sanjeev Sharma, came to us with a very interesting idea. He was producing a series called Khulja Samsim. It was a TV show, it was a game show. When it came to us, he said, hey, why don't you guys create a interesting character which could possibly be featured in the show, because it's season 2 of this show that we are going to be launching soon. So we said, wow, that sounds like a fun idea. And we came up with this whole character of Genie. And Ramon sir designed the character, and we were very clear that this is something that we wanted to do as a 3D animated character. Here was a project which demanded us, to do about 2 to 3 minutes every week, which means that we have to suddenly now, from producing about a minute of work max, suddenly we are now looking at about maybe 8 minutes a month, which was insane. But we said, hey, okay, that sounds fun. And so we designed the character. The character turned out to be really cute. Star loved it. And something remarkable happened with that show and that character. Within 6 weeks, that character became hugely popular. We're suddenly getting ratings down south, which conventionally has never been, at least back then, was not Star's stronghold. And then Star says we need like 4 or 5 minutes every episode, and I was like, that's mad. We possibly can't do this. We're already killing ourselves producing this. That's great. I said, yeah, that's wonderful. That's amazing amount of business for us, but we just can't deliver. So I came back to the studio with a very mixed feeling that here's a client which is literally asking us to triple the output, but we just didn't know how to solve this. And so we sat down and said, kya kare? And I think that sort of is the first time we realized that having a good pipeline is a make or break. So we literally redesigned the character from ground up from a technical standpoint. We came up with the idea of having library of animation for our character. Obviously, we had to write a front end. So I wrote a front end to that whole character. So we basically came up with our own software called Express Edit, which was basically an expression editor. And we decided that over a period of maybe a month and a half, we would start having a library of expressions, emotions, and all of that. And we did it. And we went back to Star and said, done, we will do this. We will give you about 3.5 minutes every week, but it'll take us about 4 or 5 weeks to transition. And I think that sort of really defined that thing. I think everyone sort of realized that, look, having a structure, a process, a pipeline and technology in the right place can actually be a very, very big deal in this business. And I think that was a sort of a switch where I would say Graphiti went from being a boutique advertising production company to a studio. That obviously, again, with Genie, there were a lot of firsts. There was a first animated host of a character. So Genie eventually went on to become the co-host of the show. The Aman Verma, who was the host, and Genie would actually open a show. I don't think that's ever happened in, at least back then, in Indian television. We've had a lot of firsts in our journey. Interestingly, in the last 13 episodes, Tata Tea came on board as a character sponsor. So the first time where a character license was sold. So again, I think it was remarkable to see that first animated host of a TV show, first character licensing deal with Star TV and Tata Tea. So I think that was an amazing year, and I think it taught us a lot about the business. The other big milestone happened was in 2004, where we acquired the rights of Jadoo from Koi Mil Gaya, and we produced Jai Bole To Jadoo, which was India's first Bollywood character coming into the animation space as a kid show. It was also the first 3D animated live action show. Again, I think remarkable, huge amount of learning, because in a 22-minute episode, we had about 8 minutes of Jadoo, as a character, as a 3D animated character. So we created Jadoo, we created a couple of other characters as well. And there were a whole bunch of live action kids obviously there. So again, very interesting experience to shoot with children. And the whole theme of the show was pollution and how these kids are, with the help of Jadoo, are fighting pollution. That show was a milestone or a benchmark show in India because it won the best show, best visual effects for a TV show. And very quickly, it sort of became a runaway train because the animation kept increasing. Very soon, one of the biggest challenges was render and that's when we came up with our own network render management solution. We wrote our own distributed render farm solution, proprietary, completely developed in-house, and that again became a game changer. So I think once Jadoo happened, that sort of set us on the path of producing original content. We've strongly believed in either owning or co-owning our IP. I think around the same time, around 2004, Disney Television Singapore reached out to us and saying, hey, can you do some interesting packaging for Disney Channel Singapore? We had their programming team come down to us and saying that we want you to create something which will have a flavor of India. So we designed a complete packaging for Toon Disney Channel, and again, very interesting because their brand mascot at that point of time was a silhouette of Mickey Mouse. It was just a silhouette, and we wanted that character to express emotions. So we decided to give it eyes and a mouth, and of course that was blasphemy because you're going and changing a Disney character, right? You can't do that. So Shashank and me worked on the storyboard, and we sent the board to Disney Singapore, and obviously with these design changes to their brand mascot. And Singapore team said, hey, you know what, we love this, but we can't take a call. We'll have to send this to our LA brand team in LA. And that animatic with our reasons for making the changes went to LA. We had a presentation with the LA team and we said that these changes should be made. And they understood and they agreed. And so interestingly, the design changes that we suggested became part of the Disney brand mascot guide. Around the 2004 time is also we move into the international market. So my first television market for that matter was actually MIPCOM. So I went to MIPCOM in 2004 October. It was very interesting. I very vividly remember going there with the head of Nickelodeon channel, Pradeep Hejmadi, and me, and we had a meeting with Steve Leader, who was Vice President International of Nickelodeon. So he sat us down and he told us that, look, you guys are absolutely mad. How can you launch a show with no bank, nothing? And it was pretty bad because we went from 8 minutes, I think, eventually towards the climax episodes and Jadoo, with almost 16, 17 minutes of animation in a 20-minute episode. It just, I think from a production standpoint, it was just impossible to manage. So we did something very crazy, never been done before, I think, ever in television. The way the programming was done back then, so we used to send them time codes of segment 1, segment 2 and segment 3 without a tape. Because there was no edit in place, there was nothing. They had just, on an email, they would have 3 time codes, which would say this is where segment 1 ends, this is the length of segment 2 and this is the length of segment 3. Saturday morning or afternoon, somebody would fly to Singapore with the tape, with those exact time codes. And everyone in Nickelodeon, I think, at that point much hated us for doing this. If we had made one mistake in those time codes, even if we went off by 1 frame, that's it. There would be a blank frame on air. I would say that in my career, I had 3 amazing mentors. I had Ramon sir, under whom I learned all my creative chops. I had Ashish Khosla, who was one of the original founders of Computer Graffiti. He was the IIT Biscuit, India's first computer graphics programmer, under whom I learned render man programming and graphics programming and everything on the technology side. So when I started my career, back then in 95, I had Ashish grooming me on the technology side, I had Ramon sir grooming me on the creative side, and a ton of the best people in the advertising business, in the cinematography side, on the editing side, under whom I used to get an opportunity to learn. So I think I was, in that sense, I would actually say that I was blessed, because I had some pretty phenomenal mentors. Crazy fact. When I was 22 years of age, I directed my first TV commercial, and my DOP was Anil Mehta. Right? He's one of those legendary DOPs, and here's this 22-year-old kid on the set telling Anil Mehta where I want the lights to be. I think I had these 2 amazing mentors, Ashish and Ramon sir, and then obviously Joanna. So under Joanna, I understood what it meant to create content for a global audience, and I was extremely fortunate to have her as my mentor. And then with her, she's a creator of the iconic Fido Dido, the 7-Up mascot as people know it, and again another amazing show called Angela Anaconda. And I think with Joe, a couple of very interesting projects. One was creating the series of Fido Extreme Shots, and then taking Fido from a 2D world to a 3D world. And I think it was really, really amazing on her part to entrust us to do that. One of the key milestone projects that we started developing around that time was Prestige Baltiboy. So Prestige Baltiboy started with interestingly as an art restoration project. So when every day, I think we were, one of the biggest blessings that we would have is that every day when we sit down for lunch together, when Ramon sir, me and Tilak, we would all have lunch together in the studio. And during that, obviously, it was one of those sessions where Ramon sir would always have something interesting to share with us. And I think during those many everyday lunches, he sort of used to tell us about the whole folk traditions of India, the storytelling traditions of India, the folk arts of India. And I got exposed to that, and we felt that maybe we should do something about it. Maybe we should revive some of these art forms. So we said, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't we start digitizing some of these art? There was a very interesting exhibition at the CST museum, which was then called the Prince of Wales Museum. The Karl Khandlawala collection, which is I think India's finest collection of Mughal miniature paintings, was on display. Within 5 minutes, my daughter was out and said, "Dad, I'm done, let's go and get the ice cream." And I was like, 40 paintings, it's not even been 10 minutes, So I said, even if you spend 30 seconds on every painting, 20 minutes, 20 minutes is required minimum. She just very calmly turned around and told me that, "Dad, it's paintings, how much time does it take to look at a painting?" I think there was a simple fact that hit me, was that probably for my generation, people of my vintage, our search engine is Google. Her search engine is YouTube. So the current generation is so visually driven, right? They're so used to consuming content as video, not even images. So whatever we are to do, I said, look, whatever we do, we have to have moving images. So obviously Raman sir said, what are you proposing? So I told him, sir, I think we should animate these paintings. And it was like, I think everybody sort of looked at me in the room saying, have you gone mad? Have you seen how much detail is there in these paintings? And I said, look, I know that this is not working. And that sort of became the genesis of Krishish Balti Boy. And then we started developing that whole idea. And then when we were developing this, we came up with the idea of Sutradhars. Again, Ramon sir used to tell us about this whole oral storytelling tradition. And that's when we came up with the idea of why not have storytellers, why not have these Sutradhars. So Krish the monkey, Krish the cat, and Balti Boy the donkey became these characters who are our Sutradhars. And they are the ones who are narrating these stories, these amazing stories from different parts of India, using different folk arts of India. So Krishish Balti Boy is basically started out as a 60-minute movie. Every movie has 3 stories from 3 different states of India. So whatever state we pick up, so for example, if we pick up Rajasthan, then we would either use Mughal miniature paintings or Rajasthani miniature paintings, or third, we would use the Rajasthani folk story. We would use the folk music from Rajasthan. The other interesting thing that we did is also the way Hindi was spoken. So what we did is, so if you actually watch the movie, you would see the accent changing. So if the first story was Rajasthani and the second story was Bihari, you would see the story, the dialect changed, right? Obviously music changed and all of that. So the whole, I think, idea there was that how can we, when a child is watching this, when a kid is watching this, he needs to understand India. He needs to understand that we are such a diverse country, right? If you show someone a Rajasthani Mughal miniature painting, and you show someone a Tanjore painting, you show someone a Gond, and then if you show someone Thanka, and if you show these to someone who's not from India, I can guarantee you that that person will tell you these are coming from 4 different parts of the world. Right? That is India. We have absolutely zero idea what was happening in the Northeast back then, right? And I sort of started looking at that space, and I said that there must have been some amount of friction, some amount of struggle that would have happened in those areas as well, right? And we thought that perhaps we should start digging into it. And I think that's when, once I started digging, I realized that there are so many interesting stories, right? There is Lachit Barphukan, there is Taji Dele Ponge Dale from Arunachal, there is U Tirot Singh CM, Rani Gaidinlu. There are so many of these people from the Northeast freedom fighters who we've never heard of. I mean, I don't think even people within those states know about. So that's when the whole idea of Bharat Hum came, and I've said that, look, I think children should be proud about India and about our own history and the way we won our freedom, right? I mean, there are so many of these people and they've fought for a very long time. I think somehow history doesn't do justice to them. So when we look at our history, we look at it from very, very, I would say, last 30, 40 years of our freedom struggle. When everybody knows about Gandhi, Tilak, Nehru, Sardar Patel, Subhash Chandra Bose, right? But I think beyond those 10 names, we don't know enough. And we wanted to sort of fix that. And we said that, look, we want to create a series which will capture the entire journey, but we wanted to make those stories more people-centric. So what we did is we started from 1550. And then obviously we went all the way up to 1947. So our first episode of Bharat Hum starts with Rani Abbaka Devi, Queen of Ullal, who fought the Portuguese in 1550. And then interestingly, when we were doing this series, what Tilak and I decided that we should focus on a lot of the women freedom fighters. So almost a third of our stories are all women, you know. I think it was hugely humbling, you know, the kind of support we got. When we presented our first episode, the then Secretary, Mr. Apurva Chandra, said that, look, this needs to be done in a lot more languages than just Hindi, because every child in this country needs to, you know these stories. So we produced the series in eventually 12 languages, Indian languages including English, and then 7 international languages. And then since we had that, then we started reaching out to partners. So we then spoke to Netflix, then spoke to Amazon, and other players in the ecosystem. And then we are honestly very, very grateful to both Netflix and Amazon that they both agreed to come together and help us launch the series in a very big way. So again, I think Bharatiyam is unique because it is India's biggest multi-platform, multilingual launch. So when we launched the show last October, it went live in 150 countries and globally premiered simultaneously on Netflix and Amazon. And the show is now available in 19 languages. And we also have Spotify as our podcast partner. So there again, we, I think thanks to the reach of Spotify, I think the show is available in 180 countries. Interestingly, on the same day, it also went live on all 28 channels of Doordarshan in 12 languages. So again, I don't think it's unprecedented. I don't think not only, definitely no animation show has done that. I don't think any other live action show has also ever done this, who have such a massive multi-platform, multilingual launch. People at Amazon knew about Krishtish Balti Boy because Gaurav Gandhi, who was then, or was already aware, and then I met Sushant Sriram and Parag Thakkar and all these guys. They all knew about Krishtish Balti Boy. So and when I told them about this idea, they said, look, this is absolutely amazing. We love it. And then I think I requested both of them that, look, in the interest of the show and ensuring that it reaches out to a wider audience, I'm going to request both of you to come on board as non-exclusive partners, because we want the show to find a wider audience. I think it took a fair amount of convincing on both sides, but I would say due credit to both of them that both of them were gracious and magnanimous enough to say yes. And I think, and obviously Doordarshan. So then when we launched in October, it was again a huge moment for Graphiti, because we had the CEO of Prasar Bharati, we had head of Netflix, Kiran Desai, and head of Amazon India, Sushant Sriram, on the same platform with the minister there when we launched the show. So I think it was a huge moment for us. I think sometimes certain shows become bigger than one company, So I think it's one of the times where everybody sees the larger picture. And I think just very humbling for Graphiti that we were able to get all these three people to come together. So I think, AI is, so much is being said, spoken, written about in the press, but I think that genie is out of the bottle, right? A lot of us would want to push it back. That's not happening. Now that it is out there, my take on AI is a little different. I don't consider AI as artificial intelligence. I treat it as augmented intelligence. I've seen so many disruptions. When I started my career, I started in 2D on rostrum, hand-painted cells. We introduced the first digital ink and paint system in India. Then we moved from 2D to 3D. I wrote the first stereo pipeline to create stereoscopic movies. So I've seen a lot of disruptions, along the career. But I would admit that AI is the biggest disruptor. That and I think it's probably coming at us at a much faster pace than most of us are comfortable with. So I think the way we need to look at it, I think as studios and as technology companies, is to sort of look at it from the standpoint of how can we help the artist. And I think AI definitely allows us that, because using AI, you can have a lot more options on the table, right? I think one of the things is that as a writer today, you use a prompt to visualize a character, right? Very quickly you can visualize these characters, right? So it helps you as a writer. I think that power didn't exist probably 5 years back. So I would say that's a plus, right? Will it therefore replace character designers? No, because I still believe that what you are today seeing or what AI is churning out today is simply a rehash of what's out there, right? If you want something truly original, I don't think AI, has reached that point today where it can give you something as original. Looking at a Picasso painting, sure, it can give you a rendition of anybody in Picasso, but to create something as distinctive as a Picasso, I believe AI is still not there. I'm not saying it will not be. Maybe in 3, 4, 5 years it will be, because with the advances coming up in quantum computing, I don't think that day is far away where, the sheer number of iterations that it can run through within a few milliseconds is gonna start throwing up some really, really amazing scenarios. I think it's our job and our responsibility to ensure that that transition for workforce is very smooth. I'll give you an example. When we introduced digital ink and paint at Graphiti, what we did is a lot of our artists back then who used to paint cells, they had that same fear that, they would lose jobs. What we did is we retrained them. We put these same artists, with pen tablets, and we asked them and showed them how they can paint the cells, using a tablet, rather than using watercolor, ink and brush and acetate cells. And they had a successful career, they had a pretty fulfilling career, and they retired when they had to retire. We are also dabbling with AI, we're also looking at tools, we are looking at ways where how we can train AI engines, using our own content. So one of the biggest advantages at Graphiti is that we own so much of our original content, so much of the art that we've created in-house over the last almost 3 decades. We're sitting on a ton of data, right? So we are now looking at ways and means of using that data, using the art, using whatever we have to train AI in a sandbox version and see what it can come up with. I think we are very, very picky and very, very careful about the IPR issues because as studio who owns IPs, we are very sensitive to that fact. We strongly believe that we are going to use AI to augment the capability of our artists. I definitely believe that it will definitely bring in tremendous amount of efficiency. It can definitely remove some amount of laborious tasks. The time taken can go down. It will allow the artist in the same period of time to try out different options. I think that's the power that it brings to the artist, his or her ability to do more within a given period of time. And I think that's how that power should be leveraged. So I think my view on Indian animation twofold. I would start on one side, I would say that tremendous potential. Just going by the success of Deepa and Anoop, Bharat Hum, Bheem, I think it just speaks volumes of, the interest that is there, right? India is definitely rising. India is something that people are seeking for, looking at us, and the world is interested in our stories. Provided they are told right, they are told with a certain amount of sensitivity, certain amount of clever storytelling, so that it doesn't become an overdose. So definitely there is that massive opportunity. I find that the current generation of artists are sometimes depending too much on technology and not focusing enough on the craft. And this is something that I have seen very closely on Bharat Hum when the style of animation was semi-realistic. And I will say that we struggled to find good studios. And we've gone back to working with a few studios and grooming them and mentoring them. The kind of classical animation skills that existed maybe 20 years back unfortunately don't exist, today in the talent that is coming out today. So I would urge all of them to sort of, we have work to be done in that space. And one of the things that I'm very happy to share, that I've been involved in the National Center of Excellence, which is now becoming a reality, which is now called Indian Institute of Creative Technologies. And I'm right in the middle of helping set that up. Through institutions like that, I think we are going to focus more on the craft of animation, VFX, filmmaking, and gaming. I think if we should never lose sight of that. Technology will always keep changing, but I think if you are a good artist, nobody can take that away from you. I think one high point that not just for me personally, but as Graphiti, one of the projects that we are extremely proud of is Yoga with Modi. We had the privilege of creating the YouTube channel of our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, when we conceived a campaign of Yoga with Modi, where we wanted to create a 3D avatar. We wanted to showcase scientifically how yoga should be done, how yoga impacts different, whether it's a skeletal system, whether it's a nervous system. Since we were creating his 3D avatar, we requested that we get time with him, to actually shoot with him. And I can now tell you that we actually got time with him. We got 3 hours with him. I don't think there can be any greater prize for any artist or for any studio to create the 3D avatar of possibly one of the most iconic leaders of our time. Okay, I think at Animation Guild, the work that you guys have been doing is pretty phenomenal. I think it's nice that in some way you are giving back to the community, and I think I'm so glad that in some small way you are also allowing me to contribute to your entire effort. And all I would say is that please keep inviting us so we can engage more with the future animators and the future talent of this country. And please tell them that focus on the craft, because that is all that stays with us eventually.